there. Good morning. This is Yashika Torib, and in behalf of our president, Mr. Dante Klink ang II, welcome to our forum on the future of maritime transport and logistics, brought to you by the Manila Times. So this forum aims to give us a clear view of what our shipping, logistics, and transport sector have to say about their future, which has for years relied so much on customer interaction, and how this pandemic changes their sector and how they deal with it. So today, we'll be having some of the biggest names and experts in the maritime transport and logistics to discuss the trends and direction that the sector is taking. And so to begin, ladies and gentlemen, friends, netizens, here is Vice Admiral Robert M. Pedro.
Can we proceed? I have three presentation outline, which is the first one is the building on gains, where we are, and sailing forward. Next slide. Building on gains, next slide. These are the significant gains that the maritime industry, our Philippine industry, has been in the past decades or so. We are the premier supplier of maritime professionals in the global seaborne trade. There are 1,600 seafarers around the world, and 1 out of 4 is a Filipino seafarer, and that's a good number for our country. The seafarers are major contributors to the economy via their remittances, and our country is number 5 major shipbuilding country in the world. Just recently, the Hanjin in Subic has shut down, but we are hopefully we will operate that soon with the coming of the Cerberus company from the United States taking over the Hanjin industry. Now present with the trend and opportunities, our maritime industry has bright prospects for the future, particularly in filling up the projected world shortage of officers estimated at 92,000 in 2020 and 147,000 plus 5 years after. Before the pandemic, we saw an increase in visitor arrivals via cruises, which we estimate to reach more than 400,000 passengers with 402 port calls by 2022, as well as to expect further growth of domestic shipping, and mainly due to the country's archipelagic configuration. Next slide, please. Moreover, demand for shipping, cruise tourism, and shipbuilding is projected to increase due to the influence of global trends such as continuing population growth, increasing urbanization, and growing volume of trade, among other factors. Lastly, the intensified demand of coastal and inland waterways transport system is expected to provide alternative costs and energy-efficient mode of transport and extend route distance to serve more in highly urbanized areas. Next slide, please. In sustaining and building upon our gains and with the crafting of a long-term plan for the maritime industry, it's time for us to commit ourselves to implement our strategic plans. As I continue with my term as the administrator of Marina, I came up with a 10-point agenda for 2020 till the end of my term, hopefully in July of 2022. It contains 10 priority programs as shown in the screen. The focus is on strengthening the marinas and organization, promoting the welfare of our employees, implementing governance and transparency, and continued compliance with international obligations of our country. Next slide. In our desire to make the marina responsive, we are currently engaged with the Development Academy of the Philippines for the modernization of the organizational structure of the agency. Among our plans include the creation of an additional position for Deputy Administrator for Administrative Affairs that will be responsible for the day-to-day administrative operations of the agency. The existing office of the Deputy Administrator for Planning will be primarily in charge in the implementation of the 10-year Maritime Industry Development Plan. We likewise intend to create regional offices for the National Capital Region, Cagayan Valley Central Zone, and the Mimaropa areas. Next slide, please. Of course, we are focusing on the promotion of welfare of our employees by boosting the morale of employees through rewards and recognition. In fact, 4 of Marina employees will be going abroad for training. 3 will be going to WMO in Europe. So there are 4 personnel of our organization that will be doing training for more than a year abroad. Next slide, please. To win the trust and confidence of our stakeholders requires implementation of efficient system and effective processes, which is a way to eradicate actual and perceived corruption in the agency and in the maritime industry as a whole. We intend to ensure that the policies that we will craft respond to the present and anticipated challenges of the maritime industry. Next slide, please. With the advent of digital age, we are left with no choice but to automate and to provide the platform for the online processes of Marina, particularly to serve our frontline, our seafarers and other stakeholders of the Marina Industry Authority. Next slide, please. As a responsible member of the international maritime community, the Philippines, through the Marina, is currently taking serious steps to prepare the country for its mandatory audit under the IMO, or what we call IMSAS, as well as its continuing commitment to respond appropriately to the audit findings and observation by the European Maritime Safety Agency on the country's maritime education, training, and certification system. As the primary supplier of maritime professionals, we need to elevate our implementation of our obligations under the STCW Convention for Seafarers 1978 as amended. Next slide. Another component of my 10-point agenda is the implementation with vigor of the 10-year Maritime Industry Development Plan. This is a plan which were crafted and collaborated by the maritime industry stakeholders as well as Marina. The 10-year MIDP has the ultimate goal of creating economic activities to enhance inter-island trade as well as to generate employment opportunities for our people while balancing them with safe, secure, seamless maritime transportation system.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Patrick Ronna.
Yeah, okay. Hi, good morning. So what is the impact of the pandemic on the supply chain? So as you will notice, these are the major players in the supply chain. So you have your trucks, have issues as well. Drivers, their helpers cannot cross, cannot get out of their barangays. You may have the trucks, but you may not have. You may have the trucks, but you don't have the drivers to drive them. So that was an issue. Trucks can actually go out, deliver to areas outside of Manila, but then had a problem going back. So there's a lot of confusion on the ground. Of course, internationally, there were issues as far as quarantining of vessels are concerned, especially for ships coming out of China, your factory to the world. There were quarantine issues that were happening before they actually enter other ports in Southeast Southeast Asia. And then in April, you see with the quarantine, air freight cargo basically stopped. There were no ships coming in, no tourist arrivals, and the belly of the planes carry cargo. So when they stop, cargo movement also stopped. Again, because of mobility issues, infrastructures or some plants or warehouses basically had to close. So with that, it had an effect on raw material. There were raw material shortages. Vendors had low capacity. There was nothing to sell. If you go to your supermarkets at the time, there's only limited brands available, and of course, labor shortages before you can actually operate. You had to make sure you had barracks, and basically the IATF limited the number of employees at a plant or a manufacturing firm can have at that time, and subject to conditions, which is really limiting. So this is a slide we lifted from NEDA. As you will know, the tourism industry is very much affected by all these. We're 7,000 islands. Tourism is one of our biggest, it's one of our big money earners or a big contributor to the GDP. And this is a problem actually for domestic shipping because, your resorts are all on these islands. So a lot of cargo move from Manila to the islands. And in that particular resort, as you will know, around it, when you go, you also go to restaurants, you do a little bit of shopping there. So that has affected the transport. The tourism industry basically had an effect on shipping as well. As well as on, at the end of the day, exports, because your factories are limited. There was nothing to move. So as of June, based on the figures, I'm looking at basically Manila, where 70% of the volume of cargo basically moved. We saw an import decline of about 23% in Manila and overall 20% for the country, while exports declined 27% overall, down 29.9% in Manila. The start of the decline was actually April when we had a sharp drop, but then volume-wise, cargo began moving after that. There was a big issue on imbalance of 4:1 between import and exports on equipment. This means for every 4 containers that are actually imported, only 1 container goes out laden, and the rest of the other containers get out of the country as empty. It's a major cost factor for the carrier. So the move to recover, everybody's talking about e-commerce nowadays, and some of us, or most of us, have experienced it. Everybody has been ordering through Grab and Lalamove, having things delivered during the lockdown. This is a big thing for everybody, I think. Just to show you a figure from UNCTAD, it was a $26 trillion business in 2018, which went up in 2019. I don't have the exact figures from UNCTAD yet. But I guess in 2020 and moving forward, this will grow. This can be an opener for us. So in line with that, e-commerce, more portals from carriers are going to come up, especially that we see volumes moving stronger to the Christmas, moving to the Christmas season. There's an optimistic view that volumes will be only about minus 20%. It's very optimistic. Things will change depending on how the government reacts to the pandemic. So just to show you, this is the Benline online system. After the month during the pandemic, and because of the lack of mobility of people, Benline, although they have a network all over the world, they were able to come up with their own portal where you can transact your import processes. They're the first actually in their own network to have that. Very proud of it. So you can see from here that you can actually monitor the way your document basically moves. It shows you how many are lined up, being processed. You see, we've been doing things traditionally wherein we have people lined up in the front, in the front counters or in the counters, taking a look or making sure that they see the document, how they move. But this time around, you can actually see it actually move virtually on the Benline system. We see the adoption of digital technology across players in the industry, both private and in government. We've seen that happening. Admiral and Pedro talked about digitizing some processes in Marina. We have the terminals pushing for online payments for their services. They've had it for about 2 years now. Prior to ARTA stepping into the picture or PPA stepping into the picture, usage was only about 12%. You can just imagine, you know, having a platform being used for the past 2 years, but only 12%. But I think chances are this would be increasing as of now. I mentioned the word government focus to hasten approvals. You see, one of the things that when you have an online portal, you have to be able to issue an official receipt. So let's pay, but then again, if your particular OR is not approved by the BIR, then it's not accepted. You still go back to your own old brick and mortar way of coming to the office, picking it up, filing it. But if assuming you have an approval from the BIR, then things go seamless. And from what I know of, it takes about 8-9 months before you can get an approval, or even up to a year. But I don't know with the pandemic now. I'm sure that everybody will get delayed. Government, I will say here that government should continue giving priority to moving goods through the ports and across borders despite lockdowns. It's very, very important. During the pandemic, whenever the status of quarantine would change, there is an issue on the ground. It takes a little bit of time for people who are running the borders to take heed. And different governments have different rules. Provinces will, or even up to the barangay level, you know, will have different rules in place. And we say that infrastructure development should continue. Yes, thank you very much. We've got the Harbour Link Road that takes you 30 minutes, 25 minutes to get to Bulacan, wherein it used to take 2.5 hours before. We welcome that. Now, Calax is coming on stream. Certain segments are already starting to move. I'm sure it will generate better flow of movements, saves trucking costs, these trucks turnaround time, better turnaround time at the end of the day. We should continue to do that. And maybe after the pandemic, we should relook. Basically, the business will really shoot up because we go on a catch-up phase. We have to make sure that we continue the development of our ports, maybe deeper drafts, added length of quays, just to make sure that we go with the flow of how trade will continue. Now, I talked a little bit about the container imbalance a while back. This is very important. This is something that we should all take advantage of, or take a look at, or how to address it. In 2017, you had I'm talking about Manila here again because that's where 70-80% of trade happens. In 2017, the ratio was 3.33:1. Yeah, a lot of work needed to be done. In 2018, it even went up to 3.53. In 2019, it went to 2.17:1. But as of 2020, it's worse. It's come down to 4.0:1. So moving forward, we've seen articles, we've read about how top global brands had issues with regards to getting their materials. You know, China is a factory to the world. So the pandemic have taught them that they should source their products from somewhere else. That's why we say move to sourcing. The industry as a whole should not be generalized and subjected to rhetoric and self-serving interests. Instead, Philippine exporters and importers should be encouraged to do their homework. There are 30 international shipping lines in the Philippines and nobody's forced to work with one or the other. Thank you very much.
Netizens, please welcome Mr. Paul Rodriguez.
I would like to present in a different way, as most of the data has already been presented by Patrick, and a lot of the plans of the government has been presented by the administrator. So I'd like to report on the activities or the status of the domestic shipping side. As everyone is very much aware that during the ECQ declaration in March, everyone was caught off guard. And practically the factories were disrupted. So a lot of production and movement of goods because of the lockdown has been disrupted. But we in the domestic shipping industry were always continuing in operation. You never heard any complaints from the Visayas and Mindanao that they are running out of basic essentials, food or medicines, because the domestic shipping industry has been in continuing operations without any disruption. There was a slowdown, yes, because of the slowdown of the factory. The delivery of the goods that are coming from the factory going to the port were affected because of so many checkpoints, and there were some confusion on what can get through the highway, and from town to town or city to the next city, there were several checkpoints. But in general, I would say that the domestic shipping industry has served the entire country its needs. Currently, the market has really practically dropped very significantly in April and May, and started to pick up on June, although we were never back into the normal as prior to the pandemic situation. The passengers, as you are all aware, that there is a restriction on the passenger movement during the ECQ. However, when the GCQ was already up, the government allowed the movement of passengers, however, on a 50% capacity of the vessels. No? But because of the LGU, the local government units of different towns, municipalities, or provinces, has their own policies, it created a lot of really disruption. There were some provinces or towns, cities that allows a passenger to come in, and but they have to undergo 14 days quarantine. That created some sort of disruption because at first they allowed the passengers to go home and have a self-quarantine in their respective residences. However, in the later part, the government has, the local government has set up their own quarantine facilities and mandated that all those incoming passengers, whether you are a resident of that respective town or province, to really compel them to stay on the government quarantine centers. And this has sort of prevented people from moving around because of this strict regulation. as you are well aware that even the nautical highways, which we are supposed to be the connection, or I would say the extension of the Philippine highways, wherein you could have just drive through or ride a bus to go from one island to another, has practically been stopped. There was really a great challenge on passenger movement. The cargo movement has been very smooth flowing, so there was no issue on that. On the container side, it has been very regular. There were some disruptions for the time being due to lockdowns in Tondo and lockdowns in Malabon, but otherwise it was very well handled. In Batangas Port, where we are having a hub, we have a free flow. We were never been disrupted. So most of the factories from the Calabar zone, especially from the food sector, has been unhampered. So it was a smooth flow. Um, we just have some concerns for our future among the ship industry players of this upcoming revision of the Public Service Act, wherein it is now pending in the Senate, because it will open up, the cabotage law will, so to speak, would be open up. And we believe that the Filipino ship owners can very well handle the inter-island trade business. But there is no need really for the foreigners to come in, and we know our trade, and the foreigners will just be here to take advantage of the Philippine island industry.
Netizens, here is Mr. Chris Alphonsus Damoy.
The future of maritime transport and logistics. But before I go to the meat of my presentation, allow me to bring us all to the reality of times today. The Manila Time published last August 17 that the next global depression is coming, and any optimism now wants to slow it down. So they've been saying that, in this article, they've been saying that all the supports done by various government all over the world is not enough, or the effort that is being put in by various government is not enough to avert the depression or the downturn of our economy now. And in the local scene, we have seen a lot of uncertainties until now. Even as lockdown eases, we have seen still a lot of local governments that has been very, very strict on their lockdowns, limiting movement of people, and even to the extent that certain areas really don't have passengers allowed on ships and even on the airline segment. And it was reported on May 21 that by CNN that DOLA estimates that 10 million workers will lose job, and some estimates even estimated to close to 20 million by year end. And our seafarers also is not immune to this. In fact, during the first 2 months of the lockdown, a number of seafarers has been sent back to Philippines without a job, and a number of seafarers also from the Philippines were not able to get employment overseas, with a lot of shipping industries has been affected, with emphasis to the cruise lines industries. And during the peak of the pandemic or the lockdowns, specifically during March, April, and May, the domestic traffic was very, very low. In fact, revenues were down up to 80% during the peak times in the period of April. And as mentioned earlier by Mr. Paul Rodriguez, this has recovered a little, but not yet, but still far from the pre-pandemic levels. And we see this to stay maybe in the next couple of years or so. And excerpt from the Shipping Associations of the Philippines, as a result, there's a lot of problems, unpaid customers and suppliers accounts, delayed vessel sea trials, uncommissioned vessel equipments, unfinished vessel construction and delivery, which is also effectively a challenge that impact the shipping industry. But we believe that as we are looking on the future, the darkest hour is just before the dawn, as we have tried to encourage everybody that we are on the lowest time now in the shipping and logistics business. However, we foresee that with the strong fundamentals of the country, our chances of bouncing back is faster. So going to the reality of things and how things are going before the pandemic, Philippines poised for sustainable growth given these indicators. Philippines being an archipelago of 7,641 islands, as published by NAMRIA. The international trade, 90% is carried by ships. More so in the Philippines, which is an archipelagic in nature, the 90% rule should more or less apply, considering that most of the bigger items like construction materials, equipments, can hardly be carried by through airlines or even by land, considering our archipelagic nature. And there are a lot of areas in the country which is not supported by any airport or to be able to transport items by air. Then we have a growing population. We are estimated to be at 110 million by year end. And what's the good thing here is more than half of our population is less than 24 years old, and less than 10% are senior citizens. So meaning to say these guys are really movers of economy. These are the millennials love to travel pre-pandemic. And prior to the pandemic, our GDP has been very, very strong at close to 6%, and prior year was 7%. Inflation was low. Employment rate prior to pandemic was high, and we believe though there will be a lot of unemployment projected towards year end, when things will start to bounce back, slowly employment will also improve. The lower poverty incidence pre-pandemic, the trade has been increasing, and tourism sector, which the shipping and logistics or the shipping per se is riding on, has been significantly growing in the past 5 years. Then internet growth has been improving with the entry of the third major players, which is expected to roll out by next year. And the government continues build program, which they commit that will not slow down even with this pandemic situation. So on the logistics segment, we also enhance the digitalization. This is on top of expanding our capacity by building additional warehouses. We have one warehouse in C5, which is undergoing construction. We've seen high demand on warehousing and logistics with the current situation of the pandemic. So we're really capitalizing on this, but as mentioned by previous speakers, the only way to compete is really to digitalize everything, real-time data, because your customers, especially on the last mile, wanted to know that the whereabouts of their cargo or parcel, and they wanted to know when they will receive such. So this is very important to be competitive. And one way of doing this is either redevelop yourself or chances of partnering with some regional bigger players in the region, which has experience in handling millions of transactions per day. There are a lot of ways to do this, and in our side, as part of preparing ourselves in the future, when recovery starts to roll, our system is digitalized. Then, my concluding slide is most of the industries now are forced to be digitalized. And if we look at it, it's not the CEO or the CTO that drives it faster. It's COVID-19. In fact, some of our customers previously, which requires proof of delivery in hard copies delivered to their offices, a number of them now is doing or accepting online billing, online protocol of deliveries, and that will enable them to settle payments. So there are challenges now. We see this as temporary, and all analysis or research says that when company bounce back in previous recessions, when the country or the economy bounce back, the first to bounce back is really the transport and logistics business, because this is a very key component to move the economy or the country. So with the crisis now, what we really need is to survive this in the next, say, 12 to 18 months, saving cash as much as we can, preparing it for the next 12 to 18 months, then looking forward by then that the country, with the help of all the stakeholders, may it be the government, the players, and the end users, will help each other to be able to bounce back and navigate the new normal. Once again, thank you and good morning.
Here is Mr. Reggie Rivera.
We are part of the DP World Network. Modesty aside, DP World has around 78 terminals being operated globally. ATI per se locally has 3 decades of industry experience, expertise, and excellence, and we have a diverse workforce of around 2,000 staff with local and global experience. These are some of the highlights that we've had in 2019. In 2019, the Container Terminal Division handled around 1.66 million TEUs, or 20-foot equivalent units. It's noteworthy to mention that since 2015 up until 2019, that volume has been increasing by an average of around 15-25%. 2020 would have been the same had it not been for the pandemic that is hitting us right now. In terms of revenue, we have generated around 13.3 billion for a total of income of around 3.7 billion. We also handled 170,000 CBUs, or completely built units. These are the cars at the Port of Batangas. We've handled 4 million domestic passengers in Batangas. And all this we did while incurring zero harm and spill incidents. Okay, I go to where we are at right now, which is Manila South Harbour. The capacity of the port is around 1.35 million TEUs, or 20-foot equivalent units. Other than the containerized, we also handle the general stevedoring division. Anything that is not containerized, it is via the general stevedoring division. The capacity there is around 1 million. And for Batangas Port, the other port that we handle, that ATI operates, it's situated exactly around 108 to 110 kilometers from Manila. And right between Manila and Batangas ports are industrial zones. Now, Batangas was conceptualized primarily to cater to locators or manufacturers that are situated south of Manila. Having said that, from the volumes before of only around 11,000 out of a capacity of 350,000, by now, Batangas is doing around 230, 250,000 TEUs on a per annual basis. Having said that, these were traditionally 250,000 TEUs that were supposedly in Manila. You talk about traffic now in the metro area. Just imagine how it would have been had Batangas not been there to cater to the locators that are south of Manila. In the bigger scheme of things, I think it's to the best interest of everyone here that for those accounts that are located south, make use of Batangas, and those accounts that are located near Manila, make use of the Port of Manila. Other than the container business, we also handle the car imports, and also the 4 million passengers that made use of Batangas as an entry point, domestic. Okay, other than the seaports, of course, we have the dry ports here. Totally, we have around four dry ports. We have the NCB. The NCB is situated around 2 kilometers from Manila South Harbour. It serves its purpose well, primarily because it's a facility where we can transfer long-staying cleared boxes. So in a way, if the yard utilization shoots up, we transfer boxes cleared to NCD so that I will have enough breathing room in the terminal. We also have the ICD. It's a bonded facility, and it's located right smack in the middle of Manila and Batangas. Now, ICD is critical in the sense that manufacturers or importers can make use of that as a storage facility for a JIT delivery. Again, I go back to what I said a while ago, that ICD will have manufacturers located very, very near the place. So instead of the containers being stored at the terminal, the containers can be stored at ICD, and they get picked up soon as cargoes are needed already for production. We also have the ECD. The ECD is like 2 kilometers away from ICD, and it's an area where empties from the shipping lines, from the consignees can be returned so that other exporters can also get the empties there, bring to their plants, and stuff it with export cargoes. So that is how it all works out as far as the terminals and the dry ports are concerned. Now, in line with the government's effort to mandate the digital platform, ATI has also started way back, I would say some 3, 4, 5 years back, embarking on the digital platform. I think it was Chris was mentioning a while ago that the pandemic actually jump-started. Well, it's true in the sense that the paradigm shift started already, like some 5 years back, but the pandemic fast-tracked the growth of the digitized platform. For ATI, we now have the e-payment portals wherein transactions can be paid using BDO and Metrobank online. We are working with more banks. We are contacting them so that we can have a wide variety of banks to be in the e-payment facility. We also have the web track and the import facility. This facility gives you visibility over the containers, over the ships, for as long as they have Wi-Fi connectivity. And lastly, some 3, 4 years back, we implemented the tabs. It's a terminal appointment booking system. It's a system wherein you get to spread out the delivery so that truck transactions going to the port. Gone are the days when you have like 500 trucks within 1 hour. Everything is in order. Everything is spread out across a 24/7 period. So that enables us to pre-plan. That enables the truck to wait shorter than before. It manages the traffic not only outside, but also in the yard and at the gates. So these are all the digital platform that we have been implementing over the years, and we do expect that the number of users will jump exponentially, what with the government pushing and mandating the digitized platform. So just to summarize what I had presented, the terminal keeps the trade moving by focusing on customers. We put customers, focus, and operational efficiencies or excellence as top priorities as we work to keep it moving. We are strategically located and operationally integrated dry ports and seaports, and we have an end-to-end logistics solution. Again, we are trying to promote faster cargo flow through digital platforms. We have the tabs for orderly pickup. We have the ATI e-payment portals And we have the real-time cargo monitoring and visibility through the apps WebTrack and Import. And of course, we continuously expand and develop new infrastructure to support future growth. We are working on additional cranes for South Harbor, plus an additional area is being refilled or infilled for additional yard. Our projects have economic impact on the wider community, bringing jobs to localities. And also, we integrate sustainability as a core company philosophy, protecting people and planet by following stringent safety and environmental standards. And we also invest on green technologies to reduce carbon footprint, fuel efficient engines, hybrid equipment, solar panels for offices, etc. That's basically the presentation.
Of Chelsea Logistics. Sir, how much have you lost, including your subsidiaries in the shipping transport business due to the pandemic? The question was from Mr. Eloy Calimoso of Seaway Shipping Digest.
The
Mr.
second
Daboy?
quarter, as mentioned, was really a bad month or bad quarter for the shipping. And for our whole group, including the subsidiaries, because revenue was even down to the lowest 10% during the first 4 weeks of quarantine, which resulted to an overall loss of 900 million pesos for the first quarter. But this includes losses on passive investments. But operating income and EBITDA is still positive. It's just that the shipping industry is highly capex intensive business, which you will incur huge depreciation as well as cost of money or interest, which brings your bottom line on a negative. But EBITDA, we're still able to manage to have a positive EBITDA or cash positive during the first 6 months of the year.
We have a question here from Trisha Alcantara of Buhay Marino. Sir, will there be a chance for the government to subsidize the building of modernized ships, just like what our partners in Japan did, so our domestic transport can keep up with the reported increase in e-commerce and logistics, sir?
Yeah, that's a very good question. One of the plan of the MIDP is to modernize our shipbuilding capability for our domestic. We requested that there should be a help from the government sectors, the economic stimulus. One example is to strengthen, magkaroon tayo ng manufacturing of steels, because when we build ships, the importations will be very expensive for our country. Kaya nga dapat tutulong din ng ating gobyerno sa pag-modernize ng ating shipbuilding capabilities. So these are the things that we need to work on, like for example, yung mga taxes imposed when we build ships for our domestic shippings. Fuel are very expensive. Mas cheaper yung fuel from the other countries. So yung effect ng mga regulations ng mga support systems in our domestic shipping and in building ships are very high, very costly sa ating domestic, sa ating kababayan. So we need to get the intervention of our government to help out in reducing the cost of building ships, in applying domestic, in helping out our domestic ship owners. So ito yung sa tingin ko makakatulong sa ating bansa pag tumulong ang ating gobyerno to alleviate the domestic the shipbuilding of our country, and of course the domestic shipping, kasi kung mahal ang cost, may hirapan silang makipag-compete. So Marina is doing is working very hard to get the interventions of other governments. Thank you very much.
Okay, so having said that is our last question, we would like to request each of our guest speakers to please give some final words for our netizens who are until now they're sending questions. Final words. Let's start from Admiral Impress.
First of all, Marina has recommended to IATF that we make our country international hub for crew change. So this will allow a lot of ships coming in. If you notice, ang daming barko dyan sa Manila Bay. Principals are coming here to do crew change. And this is a great opportunity for a country to stimulate our economy. Pag nandyan kasi yung mga barko, yung mga expenditure, like for example, yung mga logistics nila that they needed, it will infuse funds to our economy. It will also allow our seafarers to come home quicker or faster. And then hindi lang yun, the opportunity of allowing seafarers to be employed by these ships who are here. Siyempre, pag nandyan na sila, they would rather hire Filipino people, seafarers, rather than hire somebody na nandun pa sa malalayong lugar that they need to be transported by plane, which is more expensive. So allowing Philippines to be an IATF, to be an crew change, international hub for crew change, will do good for our economy. And yan ngayon yung fino-focus ng ating Marina in cooperation with the other government agencies and the Department of Transportation. So, yun lang, and stay safe. And let's always pray that we will be safe. We will not get the virus.
Yes, sir. You too. Thank you, sir. Let's now go to Mr. Patrick Ronna, sir, for your final message.
Well, the final message I wanted to say was that I think we had some technical glitch. I just want to repeat it again if I can. I just want to say that I think it is also mentioned by some of our friends here. You know, shipping is involved in 90% of what you see around you. So it's very vital. So it's very important that ships continue to move. As the pandemic is over, we'll basically see a big jump on trade. We would like to see more infrastructure offerings to interconnect cargo. Not does it only help move containers around, but basically creates a more robust infrastructure or a more robust system for the whole supply chain. We would like to see that. We'd like to see terminals grow as the volumes grow. It has to match. Modernization is also very key. Digital platforms should be put in place across. That will be a big help for everybody. We should ride this is now the tide for modernization, for technical change, and I hope that the government will also support us with the laws needed to keep things very stable. You know, we have to keep an open mind about the open market or about open trading. Our shores should be open for additional investments, and you need legislation or support from the government for you to do that. So that's all, basically, and I hope everybody stays healthy as we ride the storm.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry I forgot to unmute. But then let's now go to Mr. Paul Rodriguez of Asian Marine Transport, sir. We would also like to unmute, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. My final message is that I hope our lawmakers and our government would really seriously consider the position of the Filipino-owned ship owning for inter-island. I still believe that we can do better. Save an essential industry which should be owned by a purely Filipino company. History will tell that the Filipino ship owners are the first responders to our nation's crises and emergencies. We should not forget that. And just like power and water, uh, the movement of our essential goods are carried by the cheapest mode of transport, the shipping industry. So let us not forget the sensitivities of our industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paul Rodriguez. And let's go to Mr. Damoy of Chelsea Logistics, sir.
Once again, good morning, and would like to thank the facilitator of this forum, and of course the speakers and reactors on this forum as well. So for closing is just wanted to wish everybody well. As mentioned is by Jack Ma, surviving this crisis alive will be a win. Then business will follow. We believe that the light at the end of the tunnel is not shut down for the industry. It's just really a matter of ensuring that we survive at least maybe 12 to 18 months of difficult times. Maybe in the next couple of months or three, it will have some improvement. But considering the magnitude of this, recovery will not be easy. With that, we continue to beg for support from government, whatever would it be. May it be some easing down of some rules by expediting processes, that will help a lot, or any other forms of assistance that the government can help the shipping and logistics companies to be able to operate more or less with ease, and that will help the efficiency of the shipping operators. And we request for patience to various stakeholders that our capacity to deliver the service that we wanted cannot be 100%, but we continue to endeavor to provide the basic necessities, moving the essentials, moving the LSIs, the APORs, and the OFWs. In fact, we continue to support that one in coordination with Marina and the local government to move LSI, APORs, and OFWs with free of charge. So we just hope for a continued coordination and cooperation and help among each other to survive this crisis. So let's be safe, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. And last but not the least, Mr. Rivera of ATI. Sir, the last message.
Again, thank you very much for having us around here. It's been a very productive session, and I'm sure the netizens here have also learned a lot. I have two things to say. Number one, the port will continue to work with all of you to make sure that the flow of goods remain to be continuous. It is essential that these goods get to the barangays. Number two, we will push forward with the digitized platform. This is probably the new norm, as it's supposed to be. It's been there for the longest time, and it's only now that we're really trying to, all of us, I mean, even the netizens are really trying hard to make it a way of life. Not just an exception, but more of a way of life. That's all I can say for now, and I'd like to say again, thank you, and please, everyone else here, stay safe, stay safe. Ingat.
Once again, I am Yashika Tori. Thank you, and have a safe week ahead. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye.